Okay, Mekanan Eben. Reb Nocha Mekanan Eben. Okay, Yud Aleph Amud Beis. The wide lines, you see the wide lines. The wide lines, the fourth line from the wide lines, Amar Abaya. Amar Abaya. Let's summarize. The Mishnah quoted a debate between Reb Meir and Rabbi Yehuda about chametz on Erev Pesach. Reb Meir said you can eat chametz a whole fifth hour and you burn it in the beginning of the sixth hour. If the day begins if sunrise is 6 a.m., that means I can eat chametz till 10:59, till 11. At 11 o'clock, the beginning of the sixth hour, I have to burn chametz, and at this point, I'm not allowed to eat chametz anymore and benefit from chametz. Rabbi Yehuda is more stringent. Rabbi Yehuda says you got to push back an hour earlier. You can only eat chametz the fourth hour. The fifth hour already, you're not allowed to eat chametz. That means Rabbi Yehuda would say that you're allowed to eat chametz until 10 o'clock. But once 10 o'clock begins, which is the fifth hour, again, if sunrise was 6, so 10 o'clock I'm not allowed to eat chametz, even though I'm still allowed to benefit from it. For example, I can feed it to my cow or another animal or sell it. And then at 11 o'clock, which is the beginning of the sixth hour, that's when I don't benefit from it, and that's when I begin to burn it. That was the argument between Reb Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara quotes a Mishnah in Sanhedrin. What's the Mishnah in Sanhedrin? The Mishnah in Sanhedrin, Daf Mem, the beginning of the 5th chapter of Sanhedrin, a very long Mishnah, where the Mishnah tells us that 2 witnesses come, and one testifies about a murder that had happened on the 2nd day of the month, and one says on the 3rd day of the month. We accept the testimony. Why? Because it's very common that one person knew that the last month had 30 days. The other person did not know the last month had 30 days. He thought the last month had 29 days. If last month had 29 days, so then today, let's say today is Sunday, he would say it's Gimel. Shabbos was Beis, and Friday was Aleph, and Thursday was Chavtes. He doesn't know that last month had 30 days. The other witness does know that last month had 30 days. So today's Sunday is not Gimel, today's Sunday is Beis. Because Shabbos was Aleph, because Friday wasn't Aleph, because Friday had to be Lamed, it had to be the 30th day. And this is such a common thing. This is so common. This mistake is so common. Because remember, there were no fixed calendars. You had to know what Bezdin said, and therefore many people did not know the truth. This is a very common mistake, and therefore the testimony is upheld, of course, if everything else is consistent, primarily the same day of the week. They both say it was a Sunday, they're arguing about the date. When they're examined independently, we do not disqualify the testimony. But what if somebody said it happened on Gimel, and the other person said it happened on Hay? Gimel Adar, Hay Adar. Here, we nullify the testimony. It's null. Why? Because we don't assume that it's logical that a person made a mistake about 2 months consecutively, even though it could have happened. In other words, there's no proof that he's lying. It could be he's making a genuine mistake because 2 months, he's already off 2 months. That's possible. But we as a court will not assume that, and therefore we're going to see this testimony as contradictory, and the testimony will be nullified. Then the Mishnah continued and said, one witness says that the murder happened in the 2nd hour of the day. The second witness says it happened in the 3rd hour of the day. Their testimony is valid. Why? Because this is a common error. They used to tell time based on the position of the sun in the sky. A person says the murder happened 7-ish. The other person says it happened 8. This one says between 7 and 8, between 8 and 9. Right? We say the person looked up, he thought it was 7, he thought it was 8. He thought it was earlier, he thought it was a little later. It's not something that gives us an excuse to obliterate the validity of the testimony. I think. What happens if somebody says the 3rd hour and the other one says the 5th hour? Which means Reuven says that the murder happened 8ish, and Shimon says it happened 10ish. Reb Meir says the testimony is nullified. Rabbi Yehuda says the testimony is valid. It's still valid. This mistake is still common, and therefore you could just say there was an error. They're talking about the same event. Nobody's making up a story. It's a valid story. It's an accurate story. But people make this mistake. He said the 3rd, he said the 5th. An exception, Rabbi Yehuda said, is if somebody says the 5th and somebody says the 7th. Somebody says it happened 10ish. The other one between 10 and 11. The other one says after 12, between 12 and 1, the 7th hour. Here, even Rabbi Yehuda says that this error is not accepted. And the reason is because this is common knowledge where you looked up to the sky. Here, the sun is in the east. Here, the sun is in the west. And therefore, we cannot attribute this to an error like we did when it comes to 8 o'clock versus 10 o'clock, where the sun is in the east, and you could attribute it to an error. So Rabbi Yehuda says here, I see these two testimonies of the different witnesses, and I say that there's a real contradiction here. And because there's a real contradiction here, I cannot accept this edus. This is the Mishnah, Masechah Sanhedrin, page 48, the beginning of the 5th chapter of Sanhedrin, known as the chapter of Hayu Boitkin. They used to check the edus, and this is the Machlokes of Rabbi Yehuda. So again, 2 days of the month that are near each other, we attribute to common error. If there's a separation of 1 day, we nullify it. 2 hours that are consecutive, and one says the 2nd hour, the 3rd hour, we attribute it to error. If there's a separation of an hour in between, Reb Meir says we dismiss it, and Rabbi Yehuda says that we accept it. If it's 5th hour and 7th hour, morning and afternoon, everybody says, Reb Meir and Rabbi Yehuda would say, you obliterate the edus. That's the Mishnah. Amar Abaye. I want to learn Rashi, and then we'll go to Amar Abaye. See Rashi, Echad Omer B'Shnayim B'Chodesh. The Rashis here are long, explanatory, and elaborate. I'm going to read fast. If somebody doesn't understand something, you can ask. One says, B'Shnayim B'Chodesh Harag Zeh HaNefesh. On the 2nd of the month, one man killed somebody else. He killed a soul. One of the witnesses says it was the 3rd. Eidusam Kayemes. The Eidus is fine. Bezdin used to ask every set of witnesses 7 standard questions, as we will explain later. There were 7 standard questions. There were also many supplementary questions. But there were 7 standard questions. And this was one of them. Which day in the month? This was a standard question. When did it happen? You said you saw a murder. Which day in the month? Says Rashi. Since both witnesses independently testified that it happened in the right day of the week, say Tuesday or Wednesday, and then when they asked him about the day in the month, here there was a variation, day 2 of the month or day 3, Bezer Gimel. So we say that they were both talking about 1 day. One of the 7 standard questions is which day of the week. One of the 7 standard questions is which day of the month. If we would have asked them which day of the week, and one would have said Tuesday, one would have said Wednesday, you're done. There's no edus. But since they both said it was a Tuesday, say, and then when it came to the day of the month, one said Beis, one says Gimel, we say that they're talking about 1 day. They're testifying about 1 day, that Tuesday. They both saw it on Tuesday. One knew about Ibur HaChodesh, meaning that the last month, last month was full, it had 30 days. And Aleph, Rosh Chodesh, was on day 31. V'zeh shama b'shnayim b'chodesh yadaba. The one who said it was Beis, he knows this, and therefore, Rosh Chodesh was a day later. Aleph was on day 31, became Aleph. V'zeh shama shloisha, the one who said 3, day 3, Savur shehukva chodesh b'yom shloisha. Rosh Chodesh was on day 30. There was only 29 days to last month. V'hoyil v'yesh toyin b'kach. And since many make this mistake, so afal pi shemitzuvin onu lechalek esedusan kedei shetibotel lahatzilas hanefesh. Listen to his words. Even though we, the courts, are instructed to try to split the testimony, to try to divide the testimony in order to obliterate it, in order to save a soul, and biyadenu koyach lechalka. We don't have now the legal capacity. We don't have a crack that's big enough in the testimony to say, these two guys are not talking about the same story. This guy is telling me a story of Sunday. This guy is telling me a story of Monday. There's something off here. There is a contradiction. Somebody does not know the story. Whatever the motive is, a lie, a hallucination, a dream, a fantasy, but somebody does not know the story. That is what we will always try to do. We will always try to split the witnesses. To split them, to make them as two strangers who did not see the same event. Maybe they saw different events. Maybe one of them didn't see an event. Maybe one of them is hearsay. Whatever it is. Here we don't have the capacity to do that. Nothing happened. So Rashi is telling us a big yesod. We could say that they're not making a mistake. We could say that they both know when Rosh Chodesh was. And the reason one says Beis and one says Gimel is, you know why? It's different days. They're lying. One of them is lying. One of them is lying. Or one of them is describing a different story. It's not this story. We don't have to aid this. We could say that. Rashi says, Ein koyach b'yadeinu l'chalka. Because this was so common, it's not fear. It's not fear. We cannot delegitimize an aid based on the fact that you got the wrong day of the month. Why? Because there were no calendars.
Not only that, it's irrelevant. Everybody knew that on Tuesday. The same truth. So the fact that
Exactly. If they wouldn't say both, if they both wouldn't say Tuesday, then it wouldn't work.
But it's not irrelevant. It goes to the level of sticks that equals credibility. We say that it doesn't raise to a level here.
Exactly.
Where they're not credible, but still it's a fact.
Yes.
In the mix.
Yes.
So it's not irrelevant. It's just
Right.
It's just that
It does not delegitimize credibility.
it mitigates his error. And so we say that it's a level of truth.
Exactly.
They know the questions that they're going to be asked. Wouldn't he check to see if it was 31 or 30? They themselves should check. No, but they could find out if it was 30 or 31.
Excellent. You're saying the Aedis knew, if you're coming to court, probably you prepped you. So why didn't he check out which day in the month? The answer is, excellent question. And the way I would answer it is, I think even the Tzlach says this, one of the Mefarshim says this, he did. He did. And he was walking the street. He went, right? What's today? The guy said Beis. He asked one more guy, what's today, Beis? They all made a mistake. That's the point. He did. He probably did. Other yeah, other nish. But even if he checked, that's the point. People make this mistake. Yeah, they don't know. They don't know. A Dusim Ptela. What if it was Beis and Dalet, or Gimel and Hey? The Bahal Leka Lamidti. Here it's not an error that's common. Ukroksiv, the pasuk says, V'darashta v'chakarta v'hine emes nachayin adavar. When it comes to witnesses, you have to investigate. You have to inquire. You have to investigate. V'hine emes nachayin, and make sure that it's true, it's right. This is talking about, you know, if we're going to use a few chamashim, could you bring a few blue chamashim? We're going to use.
They didn't know what day of the month it was. How did they know when Yom Tov was?
That's Maseches Rosh Hashanah. That's a good question. They used to light torches, right? They used to light torches, and then they stopped with that, and they would send out emissaries. They did it every month, but then it stopped because the Sadducees took it over.
Why would people err then if they have this?
Because they nullified that system, because the Tzedukkim deceived the communities. So they started to send shluchim. They would take 2 children, they would send them out.
So it would take time.
It would take time, yeah. That's why many communities did not know when Yom Tov is. And that's when they started the concept of making 2 days Yom Tov. That's the whole system of Judaism in terms of Yom Tov changed because of this. So the Pasuk speaks here about, what Rashi's quoting is, the Pasuk speaks about Iranidachas. When you hear that a nation, let me have one of these, I'll be able to say the page number. When you hear that a city went to Avodah Zarah, it's called Iranidachas. So the Pasuk says, V'tarashta, you have to inquire. Well, not yet. V'chakarta, research, v'sha'alta, heitev, v'hine emes nachar na'davar nesas atayv azez b'kirbecha. It's true that it happened. Emes nachar. This is in Parshas Reis. So Rashi says from here we learn, shetehei dusan mechuvenas. It's Perik Yud Gimel, Pasuk Tesvav. You don't have to look now. I wanted it for later. V'hine emes nachar, shetehei dusan mechuvenas. The most important thing is, you heard a story, make sure that the testimony is mechuvan. Mechuvan means that they parallel each other, they match. V'iloi loy katlinon. And if not, we will not kill a person based on their testimony. V'hu v'hein pturim. And both will leave the court free, exempt from a punishment. This will not be a reason to kill the witnesses. Witnesses can only be killed through a process called hazama, which means when 2 other witnesses testify on the witnesses, not on the event. If they say, you too, how could you say that you were in Borough Park and you saw this event when that Sunday you were in Miami or you were in Melbourne, Australia, we saw you there. That's when witnesses will be penalized with the punishment that they tried to impose on the innocent victim. But in this case, when one person says it was Beis Adar, second person says it was Dalit Adar or Hey Adar, not Gimel, Beis and Gimel would work, but Beis and Hey, or Beis and Dalit, then we say that the Eidos is bottle. We do not have credibility here to be able to uphold this testimony because there's an argument about which day of the month, and it's more than 1 day apart, which is not a common error, and therefore we will let this man go free, and we will let them go free too. The fact that one of them may have been lying, that he's going to have to answer to God, but the Bezdin will not punish him. Echad oimer b'shtei shoyos. And one says the 3rd hour, Edusim Kayem, is the Toya Adam Bekach. When you're counting, when your clock is based, when your time calculation is based on the sun and the sky, an hour is a common error, and therefore there's no breach of credibility.
If he made a willful lie in his testimony, that's what they take on, that his testimony is false. Why do they inquire further? Why don't they just say that's it? Why do we get to a son?
They won't. You're right.
But I'm saying, since he's puzzled.
You're right.
Did they bring someone else in, or did they just, is that it?
That's it. Unless other Eidos came. If other Eidos came, other Eidos
In
came.
other words, once he's got a basul in his testimony, then he's out.
He's out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Echad oimer b'chamish v'echad oimer b'sheva Eidusim p'teila. Afilu Rabbi Yehuda. The b'chamish chama b'mizrachi shurakia v'yachal hovena de hatzel k'shnois and yodi k'neged ha-mizrach. Hava hatzel l'tzad ma'ariv. In the morning, when the sun is in the east, you'll place your hand in the eastern side, and the shadow will show up on the west. Ubesheva, in the 7th hour, chama b'ma'ariv v'hatzel l'tzad mizrach, and the shadow will be cast on the eastern side. This finishes the Mishnah Masechah Sanhedrin, argument between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir. Amar Rabbi, back to the Gemara, 4 lines from the top, from the wide lines. Amar Rabbi said, Kishatimtza loymar. If you want to be meticulous and understand what the Tanoim are saying, let me explain to you this Mishnah. According to Reb Meir, ein adam toyev v'lo klum. Halachically, we do not assume that a person is making an error at all. According to Rabbi Yehuda, the halacha is assuming and giving a leeway of making an error in a half an hour. You could be wrong by half an hour. What do I mean? According to Reb Meir, ein adam toyev v'lo klum. The halacha does not give any leeway for error. We say there's no room for error. If so, why does Reb Meir accept the testimony? When one said 7 and one said 8, I'll answer you. Because Ma'isa Kihava, we're assuming that when did the story happen? The moment the second hour left and the third hour came in. So this would be the moment of 8 o'clock sharp, 7:59, the end of 7:59 sharp, when the second hour ended and the third hour began. So the person who says that it happened the second hour, he means the end of the second hour, 7:59. The person who said it happened in the third hour, he means the beginning of the second hour. So he's saying 7:59 and 59 seconds. And he's saying, right, 7:59 and 60 seconds, so to speak. He's saying this end of the second hour, saying the beginning of the third hour. And that's why we accept the testimony. In other words, we assume that Eidos do not make an error at all. There's no error. If we could prove that there was an error here, we would not accept the testimony. Ein adam toyev v'lo klum. So why do we accept it? Because one said second, one said third. You could say second means the end of the second and third means the beginning of the third. So if we would be forced to say that they're talking about different times, we would attribute it to a lie, not to a mistake. Rashi, when you're going to be meticulous in the words of Reb Meir Rabbi Yehuda, Timtza, l'divrei Reb Meir de mekayim eidos de beis v'gimel, u'mevatel shel gimel v'shel hey, ein adam toyev v'lo klum. A person does not make any error. U'l'divrei Rabbi Yehuda de mekayim av shalosh v'chomesh adam toyev chatzi shah. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, we attribute error for half an hour. Li Reb Meir ein adam toyev v'lo klum v'atoyev shakrinu. And if somebody's making an error in time, we attribute it to a lie. So why does he uphold the testimony of 2 and 3? Because he says they're both talking about the same moment. They're not talking about different moments. The story happened at the end of 2 and the beginning of 3. As the second hour is leaving and the third one is coming in. And both were testifying about that moment. The Haidamar Shtayim B'Soif Shniya Kamar, the Haidakamar Shalish in the beginning. So this is what Reb Meir is saying. That person who says 2, what he means is the end of 2. 8 o'clock, mamish, when the 7:59 ended and 8 o'clock was coming in. And the second one said the third, but they were talking about the same moment. And therefore, halachically, I can accept the testimony. What happens if somebody says 3 and 5? Reb Meir says, I can't accept the testimony anymore. Because even if he means the end of 3, and you mean the beginning of 5, it means there's a discrepancy of an hour. If there's a discrepancy of an hour, Reb Meir says, what is happening? A person doesn't make these mistakes.
Everybody's separate was so good in knowing the time?
Oh. So now you ask, what do you mean, Eid Adam Toyev V'lo Klum? What, everybody's an expert? Everybody's an expert? We don't have a clock. Now everybody's an expert. 8:27. You're looking at the sky, everybody's an expert. Obviously, what it means is you're witnesses. You're coming to testify in a capital crime. What you should say is, I don't know which hour. They're not saying, I don't know which hour. They're saying, I know which hour. Here, Reb Meir says, Ein Adam Toyev V'lo Klum. We're going to keep you to that. We're not going to say he made a mistake. Say, I don't know the hour. It looks, maybe, I don't know. You're an aide. Not Reb Meir is saying nobody in the world makes mistakes. Of course people make mistakes. Reb Meir didn't have such a standard, nobody makes a mistake. In this case, when we're looking at the halacha of Eidos, we say, if they said an hour, we're going to hold you accountable exactly. We're not going to give you maybe a half an hour off, an hour off, 2 hours. No. Exactly. Then how can we uphold the testimony here? The answer is, I say you meant B'Soif Shtayim. You meant B'Tchilas Shalish. It's the same moment. There was no toes. What you call the second hour, I call the third hour. You're talking about the end, and I'm talking about the beginning. So, Mela, there's no mistake.
So, according to Rabbi Meir, he'd rather have someone say that it was daytime and it was morning and it this afternoon rather than a specific hour that's not correct.
So Reb Meir feels that Bezdin's responsibility is to uphold the testimony in this case, and it's not a breach. It's not a breach of credibility. Rashi continues, and Rashi says, "Ulekaman parich." We're soon going to ask a big question. How do we know that's what they meant? Dilma hayde kamar shtayim betchila shtayim kamar v'yesh chilik beinayim. Maybe when he said 2, he meant 7, not 8, not 7:59. And since Reb Meir doesn't give room for error, that means you have to turn one of them into a liar. You don't say that they're talking about the same story and they're both truthful and one is making a mistake. Reb Meir says, Ein Adam Taya. So l'chayre, you should say one of them is saying the non-truth. That's what the Gemara is going to ask. Abaye is saying, Reb Meir says, we assume that 2 means the end of 2 and 3 means the beginning of 3. Why don't you assume that 2 means the beginning of 2? Why don't you assume that? But Reb Meir says, no, we don't. We don't. Now again, of course, Reb Meir holds if you ask them, and one guy says, oh, I mean 7, and the other guy says, oh, I mean 8, I mean 9, right? The end of 3, and he says the beginning of 2, he says the beginning of 2, he says the beginning of 3. Of course you'll nullify the Eidos. No, but the Meir is not arguing with that. The Meir is saying that if they just say 2 and 3, Bezdin upholds the testimony. Why? Because we say he means the end of 2, he means the beginning of 3. This is Reb Meir. What's Rabbi Yehuda? L'divri Rabbi Yehuda, Adam Toyeh Chatzi Shah. According to Rabbi Yehuda, there is room for error a half an hour. Thus, if we say 2 and 3, perfect. Even if we say 3 and 5, it works perfect. What's 3 and 5? 3 and 5 would mean I say 8-ish. You have a chart, it may be easier for you. I say 8-ish, you say 10-ish, right? I say 8, after 8, you say after 10. 3 and 5. According to Reb Meir, it's disqualified. But if a person makes a mistake, 8 could make a mistake by half an hour, it works. Why does it work? The Gemara is going to say, we're going to say, Maisa ki have bepalga de arbaha. The story happened in the beginning of the 4th, in the middle of the 4th hour. Palga means half, midpoint of the 4th hour, meaning 3.5 hours from the beginning of the day. So if sunrise was 6, 7, 8, 9, it happened 9:30. Great. V'hai dekamar shalosh b'soif shalosh. The one who says 3 meant the end of 3 hours, which is the beginning of the 4th hour. So if it's 6, and he said it happened in the 3rd hour, what's the 3rd hour? 8. He didn't mean 8, he meant 8:59 becoming 9, right? The katoi palga de shaita lekamei. So basically he made a mistake that the event, he made a mistake, palga de shaita half an hour, lekamei earlier. The one who said Chamish is Betchilas Chamish, the beginning of the 5th hour. He doesn't mean 10:59, he means 10 o'clock. He made a mistake and that he delayed the event by a half an hour. One person thought it was a half an hour earlier than it really was. One person thought it was a half an hour later than it really was. Rashi. The story happened in the half of the 4th hour, meaning 9:30, 3.5 hours. One person said 3 and 5, he means the end of 3, which is 9, he means the beginning of 5, which is 10. Everybody made a mistake by half an hour. It happened 9:30. I looked at the sky. It's 9. You looked at the sky. 10. I come to Bez and I say it's the 3rd hour. What's the 3rd hour? 3rd hour is the end of the 3rd hour. 9. 8:59. 9. You come to Bez and you say it's the 5th hour. You don't mean 11. You mean 10. And therefore Abaye says, Rabbi Yehuda says we hold up the testimony. And Rashi says, we're going to have a question. How do we go this length in order to bring together the Eidos? Why don't you say the Gimel Kama? Why don't you say this guy meant the beginning of 3rd hour, meaning 8, And the other guy meant the end of the 5th hour, meaning 11. V'yesh chiluk gadol beinein. It's a huge chiluk. It happened 9:30. I said it happened 8. You said it happened 11. Right? And there's a difference of 3 hours between us. I said 8, you said 11. They can't make such a mistake. Even if it happened 9:30, how can they make such a mistake by an hour and a half? If I say 8, I made a mistake an hour and a half. If you said 11, you made a mistake an hour and a half. Split the testimony, meaning say it's 2 separate stories. One is lying, and you save a soul. We're going to come to that question. But what we're learning here is, according to the mayor, we assume no error. And that's why the only testimony that we can uphold is if we can faithfully say there was absolutely no error. They both identified the right time, they just gave it different names. 2 and 3. End of 2, beginning of 3. According to Rabbi Yehuda, we give a half an hour room for error. Half an hour. Chatzisha. Half an hour. So I say 3, you say 5, I'm the end of 3, you're the beginning of 5, and the story happened in the middle point. It happened 9:30, I said 9, you said 10, we're both off a half an hour. Ikadamni, another version, in Abaya. Very, very similar, just one minute detail off. Amar Abaya, Kshatim Tzalem, and if you want to be Medaya, you can explain it. A person could make a mistake by a mashu. Mashu means a small fraction of time, a tiny fraction of time. According to Rabbi Yehuda, an hour and a little bit. So this version actually gives a little more leeway. Story happened either at the end of the 2nd hour, 7:59, the beginning of the 3rd, which is 8. And one of them is making a little bit of a mistake. If it happened 7:59 and you said it happened 8, you're off a minute. If it happened 8 and I said it happened 7:59, the 2nd hour, I'm off a minute. In other words, according to this language, we're not assuming that they mamish mean that second. 7:59, 59.9 seconds where there's the transition of the 2nd to the 3rd. There's a mashu off. I said the end of the 2nd hour, you said the beginning of the 3rd hour. We assume that there could be a mistake by an hour and a little more. Story happened either at the end of the 3rd hour or the beginning of the 5th hour, which means either the end of the 3rd hour, which would mean 9 o'clock, or the beginning of the 5th hour, which means 10 o'clock, right? And one of them is making a mistake by an hour and a little more. If the story happened at the end of the 3rd hour, meaning it happened 8:59, and you said it happened at the 5th hour, which is 10, so you're making a mistake an hour and a minute. If the story happened at 10, and I said it happened in the 3rd hour, which means 8:59, so I'm making a mistake by an hour and a little more. Rashi, Chad minayu kotoi mashu, second to the last Rashi, on Daf Yud Aleph Amud. Im besoif shtayim hava hayde kama sholosh betchilas sholosh v'kotoi mashu, v'betchilas sholosh hayde kama shtayim besoif shtayim v'kotoi mashu. L'divrei Rabbi Yehuda ma'is hava besoif sholosh v'hayde ama betchilas chamesh toi shar revius u'mashu shesoif sholosh. I said it happened at 10. So I got wrong the whole 9, and 1 minute, 8:59 till 9. Inami, betchilas chamesh, however, really it happened 10. I said it happened at the end, I said it happened in the 3rd hour. I meant at the end of the 3rd hour, 8:59. I missed the whole 9 till 10 plus that minute. Fine. This is the shita of Abaya, how to understand the Mishnah. Rabbi says people don't make a mistake at all, or a mashu. Rabbi Yehuda says people make a mistake a half an hour, or a shah mashu. When we're talking about witnesses who come to Bezdin, obviously we're more stringent because they're giving us an hour. We're taking them at face value. You said you know the hour. I will hold you accountable. That's Rabbi's Shitta. And Rabbi Yehuda gives a little more leeway. This is Abaye. Says the Gemara, also Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Yehuda, went, Omer l'shmaitze kamei Rav. And he said over this conversation, this explanation of Abaye, this shmaitze, this discussion, he gave over to Rav. Omar, Rav heard what Abaye said from Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Yehuda. And he says, I don't understand. Uma ilu daikinon ba'ani sadi. If we would be medayik in the testimony of these witnesses, if we would get meticulous, if we would get down to it and we would start being medayik means chopping it up, dissecting it, dicing the vegetable. We would really be medayik. We would, from the word dayik is from the word we say in the morning, hadek, hetek, hadek. If we would grind up the testimony, you would take it apart. That's what medayik means. You would take it apart. You would crush it into little pieces, right? If we would be medayik. And we would say, when you said the third, you meant 8, not 9. The end. According to this, it's an edus that contradicts each other. Mukheshes means they're denying each other. Why? Because according to the Yehuda, a person can make a mistake at most an hour, but not 2. If I said 8 and you said 10, I said the third hour would mean the beginning of the third hour. It could mean the beginning, could mean the middle, could mean them, could mean the beginning. You said the 5th hour. I'll do it at the end of the 5th hour. What's the end of the 5th hour? 11. Right? So I'm saying 8, you're saying 11. That's a discrepancy of 3 hours. 8 is mekashas. So if I would come and say 8, then you would come and say 11, what would the Yehuda say? Of course we can't accept this testimony. They're contradicting each other. It's a different story. One of them is lying. V'loy katlina. And then you would never kill the man. We're going to stand up and take the life of a person based on a suffix because I could justify the testimony? I don't understand. The Torah says, Parshas Maseh, V'shoftu ha'eda, v'hitzilu ha'eda. The pasuk says in Parshas Maseh, Perik Lamed Hey pasuk Chavdan. I don't know if you have the psukim on the side, but if you do, you can take a look. It says V'shoftu ha'eda ben hamako ben goyel adam. The community, the court has to judge, and then the Torah continues the next pasuk. V'hitzilu ha'eda sertzech mi'ad goyel adam, and they save him. What do you mean they save him? If he's guilty, they don't save him. So Chazal learn out from here a big yesod that the focus always has to be to save, not to kill. If you don't have a choice, you got to kill. This doesn't mean you pervert justice. If there's accurate testimony and cross-examination, and it's determined halachically that the man is guilty, you have to implement the verdict, whatever the verdict is. But the focus is, if there's a way out, if there's a way of finding a breach in the testimony, we go for it. That's the focus. In other words, yes, we have an atiyah, we have an inclination to try to save a person, not to kill a person. If you don't have a choice, you have to follow the halacha. This doesn't mean bias because we don't want to. If we have to, we have to. But if we're not forced by halacha, we don't. So Rav is asking a gavaldic question. I know Abaye could be right. Maybe he means the end of the 3rd, and the other guy means the beginning of the 5th. I'm good.
Why can't you ask them if it means the beginning or the end? They don't know.
No, if they say clearly what they meant, then there's no argument. One guy says the 3rd hour, and I mean the beginning of the 3rd hour. And you come and say the 5th hour, and I mean the end of the 5th hour. Then we're not doing this game. Then they're contradicting each other. You're talking about 8, which is the beginning of the 3rd hour. You're talking about 11, which is the end of the 3rd hour. There's a discrepancy of 3 hours. Reb Meir would agree. Reb Yehuda would agree. Sorry, that's it. This is not testimony. It's like you saying it happened Wednesday. Rosh Chodesh, the other guy says it happened a month later. It's over. Just like 2 months, right? We're not accepting this testimony. Sorry. Too much. Too much discrepancy. We're talking about they just said the hour. So it could be a few things. It could be they left. It could be we finished the whole examination and they're gone. That could be. Or could be it could be that, I mean, I would say Bepashtus more. You're saying, why don't you just ask them, right? Why don't you just ask them?
Why don't you ask him if it's, do you think it's more like 4 and 5, or 3 and 4, or 3 and 2? So, and they see if there is an intersection. If they say 3 and 4, and the other one says 4 and 5, then it means they could have seen in the same hour. So that's
Everything's approximate.
yeah, but Hakira, I mean, if you look
There's
at
no
the
minutes and
results,
it's all approximate. Everything is approximate.
they don't have a-
That's the second version. That is only a mashu. It's a mashu.
Rabbi's whole thing is you have to see the mice. That's really what he's asking.
Yeah.
Why do you have to go to the extreme now? I can go to a case where
Just say, is it 3
you
and
can save
4,
him.
more like
That's the whole question that he's asking.
Yeah,
When you
yeah,
say
yeah.
3, what do you mean? 2 and
Yeah.
3, or
I
3
don't
and 4?
understand, why, you want to say that the witnesses left, and why don't they let everyone sit there, and then
So he's
record
not
the first
arguing with the buyer
witness?
then.
If they know that there's a kasha, or that there's a contradiction that's present, then they would certainly recall the first witness to clarify what his testimony
Yeah.
is.
So I think the glatt thing to say is that the witnesses are not answering that question.
They don't know.
No, if witnesses say.
They're
now-
feigning ignorance in that
So
question.
the record is closed, and they're looking at a closed record. That's-
So we're looking at a closed record, 3rd hour, 5th hour. Abaya said, okay, we say end of 3rd, beginning of 5th, right? End of 3rd, beginning of 5th. Reb Meir says, sorry, too big of a discrepancy. Reb Yehuda says, I'm good. People make a mistake by an hour. It may have happened at the end of the 3rd, and you made a mistake. It may have happened at the beginning of the 5th, and I made a mistake. Comes Rav, I don't understand. If you want, take it apart, you can also tie it to the beginning of the 3rd and the end of the 5th. You're not sure. That's the point. If they said, then I have no issue. If one guy says the 3rd, and I mean the end of the 3rd, then I don't have an issue. Then he's basically saying the beginning of the beginning of the 4th, right? And the other guy says it's the 5th, and I mean the beginning of the 5th. Fine, so it's clear. But you don't know. You're being medayik. So he says, if you can be medayik, you can also push them this way, not this way. You're trying to push them together. You could also go like this. Why are you going like this and killing the guy? Why don't you go like this, separate them, and save the guy? That's my question. So if we have some mitzvah that we have to kill, Chalila, fine, but we fakert. V'shavt away the vitziluaid. Wherever there's a suffix, what do? We right away chop on that suffix, even if it's a little suffix, and we don't kill somebody. In other words, to kill, you have to be ultimately certain. Not to kill, you have to have a doubt. That's the difference. To kill, you have to be 100%. Not to kill, you don't have to be 100% innocent. I don't know. If he's a danger, we may imprison him. But I don't know. I can't kill somebody. Here, you don't know. If you don't know, say that you don't kill him. A very strong question of Rav.
No concept of calling back witnesses to clarify.
So you're saying call them back.
I'm asking you how the Torah works.
Let's say you call them back. Right?
And you ask him if it, what do you think, was
No,
3rd
obviously you're talking about in a scenario you can't call them back.
or he doesn't know.
If you can't call them back, you can't call them back. Or they push it, they
Themselves will know.
they don't know. They can't say more. So we're the ones who have to now deal with it, the Bezdin. So that's Rav Shaila.
Is it, Abaya now is out?
Ah?
Abaya's not good?
Rava was very upset. Rava was very upset. I don't understand. Rava says you misunderstood the Mishnah. You misunderstood the Mishnah. You were wrong. The Mishnah does not mean that. The Mishnah means we do divide them. We divide them as much as possible. We will do everything to divide them. But sometimes, even if we do that, we still have to uphold the testimony. Ella Marava. Ella Marava. Let's see Rashi. Beautiful two Rashis here. L'shmaitza da Abaya. He said over, the Huna said over the halach of Abaya. Omar Rava. Rashi here really goes out on Abaya with the name of Rava. Are you really right that a mayor says we only give leeway of a mistake of a mashu and a Yehuda an hour according to the second version? If that's the case, how are you combining the testimony? Who told you that the first one, meant the end of the hour, and the second one meant the beginning of the hour. Because you're trying to make them close. You want that their edus should be so close that the only discrepancy should be the amount where people make mistakes. So we could say it's just a mistake. It's an innocent mistake. What if you would have done the other opposite? You would be medayik to divide them. Matzis lememi, you could say haydama shalosh betchilas shalosh, vaydama chamish besoif chamish, v'yashchiluk beinein shalosh shoyes chasem mashu. There's a discrepancy of 3 hours minus a little bit. Because if I said the third and I meant the beginning of the third, it's 8. And you said the fifth and you meant the end of the fifth, it's 10:59. So it's 3 hours chasem mashu, missing, let's say, a minute or a little bit. I'm using the word minute. They didn't have minutes, but a fraction. Since you're saying people don't make such mistakes, their testimony gets divided, split. It's a contradiction. And we don't kill this guy. And we're going to stand up and make their edus close just to kill that guy? We search for the benefit. We search to save, not to kill. Since Rabbi Yehuda says the edus is valid, the svirilu that he holds, even if you divide them to your utmost capacity. You're going to say, and the first guy meant the beginning, and the second guy meant the end. Yeshlach litlois betos. You could still attribute it to error. Ve'ein chayachel hakchishim, and you can't deny them. Sha'adam toya b'chol zois, because people make an error. So Rabbi Rava is changing the entire pshat. What does Rava say? Elam Rava, back in the Gemara. L'divrei Reb Meir adam toya shtei shayos chasem hashu. Whoa. Reb Meir says we give people room to make an error by 2 hours. Missing a fraction. According to Rabbi Yehuda, room for error 3 hours, missing a fraction. And he explains. So when I say 2 and you say 3, the story happened either in the beginning of the second or the end of the third, meaning I said 2, that's 7. So we're going to say I meant 7. You said 3, which is 8, so we're going to say you meant 8:59. So the discrepancy between me and you is what? 2 hours chasam mashu. I said 7, you said 8:59. Why? Avada, if I meant 7:59 and you meant 8, it would be gewaldig. But I'm not going to do that to kill somebody. I'm going to try to separate you as much as possible. I'm going to give you the worst possible recommendation, not the best possible recommendation. I'm going to divide you. I'm going to say second hour means 7. Third hour means 8:59, not 8 o'clock. That's what I'm going to do. And if I say that, what does it mean? It means that the discrepancy between me and my friend was how much? 2 hours chasam mashu. 7 and 9. A drop less than 9. That's why it's Shtei Shoyes Chasamash. Divrei Reb Meir Adam Toyer Shtei Shoyes Chasamash. Ma'aseh Kavoi B'tchilas Shtayim B'sev Shosh V'chad Minayu Katoyer Shtei Shoyes Chasamash. Yeah, and one of them made an error by 2 hours, less than a fraction, and we are assuming that this is a very common error. And Reb Meir says, therefore, I cannot say that this testimony has a loophole. It doesn't have a hole. It doesn't have a breach. Person looks up and makes a mistake. In other words, it may have happened 8:59, right? And I took a look, almost 9 o'clock. I took a look, and I thought it was 7. That's yeah. It's early morning. On the other hand, it may have happened 7. You took a look, and you said it's almost 9ish. It's almost 9ish. Shtei shoyes chasem mashu is a mistake. It's human error. There's no reason to say they're lying. I'm sorry, I can't. It's not anymore v'yitzilu ha'edah. Huh? Around the clock, yeah. Around the clock. That's the point. That's the point. That's what Rabbi Meir says. Rabbi Yehuda says, Adam toyer shalosh shayos chasam mashu. I give you room for error 3 hours minus a fraction. So if I say the third hour, you say the fifth hour, again, we're going to try to divide. We're not going to try to connect. I'm going to say the beginning of the third hour is 9. You said the fifth hour, it's the end of the fifth hour is 11. Or a drop less, 10:59, right? Because it's the fifth hour. They say 10:59. Story happened either the beginning of the third hour, meaning 8, or the end of the fifth hour, meaning 10:59. Yeah, one of them made a mistake by 3 hours minus a fraction. So even if we're going to interpret their hours in the most remote and distant possible way to widen the discrepancy, not to lessen the discrepancy, I still uphold this testimony because this is not a lie. There's no breach. There's no breach of authenticity here. There's no sign of dishonesty here. This is a common mistake that people make. Why? Because they're counting their clock. They're counting their time based on the sun in the sky. Let's see Rashi. Ela Marav. L'Reb Meir Adam Toya Kol Mashata Yachal Chalak Es Elu Shaya Mekayim Medusa. We're going to try divide. The Hainu Shtei Shayas Chasamash. Umishim Hachi Edusan Kayemes the China Miamrit Zeh Shamer Shtayim B'Tchila Shtayim V'Zeh Shamer Shalosh B'Sayv Shalosh. So listen to his words. Kol Regoyim Shabeintayim Shira Ma'isa Behen. All the minutes, all the seconds, all the moments that the story can happen between 7 a.m. and 8:59, yesh la'elu litus v'loy makamay sham. Whether the murder happened 7 or the murder happened 7:38, 8:30, 8:45, 8:59, in this span of time, if it happened, a person is justified to say it's 7, it's 8:59, it's 8, it's 8:30. It's all justified. Why? Because it's a span of time that lends itself to this error. There's a margin of error we give you. Rashi says, the Tos Moetis. Of course, if the story happened at the end of 2 or the beginning of 3, I say 2, you say 3. The story happened either at the end of 2 or the beginning of 3. The Tos Muetasu, then it's a very small margin of error. Why is it a small margin of error? Dina mi amar hay betchila shtayim en kantos elasha. V'hayina mi amar b'sayv shalosh en kantos elasha. If it happened at the end of 2 and the beginning of 3, or the beginning of 3 meaning, it happened 7:59 or 8 o'clock. Then Avada we understand Reb Meir's view. Because even if I said 7, right? And you said 9, you're only an hour off. Even if he said 3 and he means at the end, Ein kantos alasha. Elafilu have a ma'ase betchilas shtayim. V'haydama shalosh b'sayv shalosh. V'yesh kantos shtei shoyes chasem mashu. Afilu hachi en koyach lanu levatlon she'af bekach adam tay. Even if we're going to assume that that you meant the end of the third hour. And the story happened when? In the beginning of the second hour. So we're dealing with 2 hours less a fraction. A person makes a mistake. Well, Rabbi Yehuda Nami, and Rabbi Yehuda Nami, we're going to make the same cheshbon with 3 hours. Ubahayin yonah de pirishus. The chinami merachekes lu b'chola yechoilas. Akati to bahachi. Even as we distance them as much as we can, people still make this mistake. The Hainu Shalosh Shoyes Chasemashu, Maisa Kihavi, he goes through the story, Chuli, that basically it happened in the beginning of 3 or at the end of 5. Keloima, B'chol Mar Shata Yochel Laharchik, Afilu Ha'echad Amar Shabba'isa Shah Haya Maisa, Ein Eid Harachik Mimeno Mukchish T'Tobach. Go as far as possible from each other. And one says that's the moment it happened. It happened at the beginning of the third hour, meaning it happened 8 o'clock. And you're going to say that the other story happened when? 11 o'clock. It's fine. 3 hours less a fraction, a person makes a mistake. Granted, this is how Rava understands the Gemara.
You told Rafuna that you must have heard wrong.
You
told Rafuna that you must have heard wrong from Rabbi.
He didn't say you heard wrong. He just couldn't understand how Abaye would say this. Take a look.
You heard specifically that it was a short time.
Yeah.
So that means he must have heard.
Yeah. Take a look in Tosfos, the top Tosfos. Ella Amar Rava L'Divri Reb Meir Adam Toya Beis Shayos. Interesting question. Gewaldige question. Reb Meir said you can make a mistake by 2 hours. So if I say 2, you say 3, it works. Maybe I meant 7, you meant 9, that's fine, it works. Im Taimar, im Kain Echad Eimer Begimel, Vechad Eimer Behei, Amaya do some Taylor, name of the Bereviyas have. If so, why does Reb Meir argue in a case where one said the 3rd hour and one said the 5th hour, and here he argues Reb Yehuda, it should still work. Why? Because, say the story happened in the 4th hour. In other words, I meant the beginning of the 3rd. You meant the end of the 5th. So I meant 7. You meant 11. Right? That's a big jump. 7 till 11. Begimel ubehei. Right? I say begimel. So we say it's the beginning of the 3rd hour. 8. And you said the 5th hour, which is the end of the 5th hour, which is 11. That's a chiluk of 3 hours. So Rabbi Yehuda says it works. Rabbi Meir says it doesn't work because 2 hours, yes, 3 hours, not. For Ektaisvus, it should also work. Why? You can't say they're liars. Say the story happened when?
Right in the middle. Yeah.
Right in the middle. Story happened right in the middle. You're saying 11. I'm saying 8. Say the story happened 9:30. Even 9, a little after 9. You say people have 2 hours, almost 2 hours. Say it. If you say the story happened like one side, 8, then you have to be lying because you gave me an 11. I got it. The story happened at 11, then I have to be lying because I gave you an 8, and people don't make this error. But according to this, Tosfos says, why is it made arguing with Rabbi Yehuda? Say the story happened in the 9s, and they both are honest. Because Rava holds, that the Meir holds, you will never attribute a mistake to both. That's already too much. It's too much benefit of the doubt. Another one guy made an error, I'm fine with that. An error by 2 hours, I'm fine. But to say that everybody both are off, I don't say that. That's why the Meir says, Ad kedei kach not. One guy, yeah. To say both, I'm stretching it. Bezdin says, sorry, we're not killing anybody for that. Can't. Why does the Meir say it's not good? Ilu daikus bahani sadi dilma haide kamer begimel besoif gimel. When one says gimel and one says hey, the Meir says the edus is bottle. Why? Be medayik in the edus and say gimel is soif gimel. And if it's soif gimel, that means it happened 9 o'clock. So even if it really, I say it happened 9 o'clock. Even if it really happened 11, I'm still good. To be machmir and to be mekayim the edus to kill, we're not going to go crazy. You could find out that it's b'soif gimel and then kill the person, but we're not going to do it. V'hitzilu ha'eda means I'm going to try to grill them until I see what happens. No, the Rabbi is telling us, don't stop grilling. He tells them, don't stop grilling. If you find out Taka he meant the end of the 2nd hour and the beginning of the 3rd hour, fine. But if not, if you find out he meant different, for sure you have to change it. Even if you don't, if it's a suffix, give the benefit of the doubt. And v'itzilued. So Tosfos says, but the opposite Rav is not going to say. You're not going to say, grill him, find out that he meant the end of the 3rd hour. If he meant the end of the 3rd hour, you'll kill the guy. Is that we're not going to do? We're not going to do. Again, if he tells us it was the end of the 3rd hour, we don't have a choice. If we have to kill, we have to follow halacha. We can't mix in our personal incentives here. But the point is, I'm not going to go destroy him until I get out that soif that could kill the guy. With the other way, I will do it, and if I can't get a clear answer from him, I'm going to say, okay, I don't know. But if I could make it that hour, I'm going to save a person. That's what I'm going to do. You have to teach. Rabbeinu David says, one of the Rishonim, Rabbeinu David says, he tries to justify it, you have to explain something for Abaya. He says, even though the Rabbeinu David says, that Abaya holds, even though the Torah says, V'shaftu eida v'itzilu eida, he says that we do not assume witnesses are lying if we could say they're not lying. That's what he says. Taka v'itzilu eida, but Rabbeinu David says, Abaya holds, we never assume edus to be lying if they have a cheskes kashrus, if they're fine people. We'll not assume if we could say that they're not lying. That's Abaya's word. That's what Rabbeinu David says Abaya holds. Rava holds, no. Rava holds, that's not the way to do it. The only way we will not say they're lying The only way we will assume they're not lying is if it's a common error. In other words, if it's a common error that people are constantly making, the sun is in the sky, and you're making an error by an hour, you're making an error by 2 hours, going to be by 3 hours, then we're going to say that since it's very common for people to make this error, we're not going to say they're not making an error and they're lying. That we're not going to do. Even Rava won't do that. I vitzilu eda. Vitzilu eda also has limits. Vitzilu eda doesn't mean I'm going to dafka prove that you. I could always say I can always say people are lying, right? Any aid could come and we could say, oh, the guy is lying. How do you know? How do you know? We can always do that. But we don't do that. An aid, unless we discover a breach. So Rabbi Yehuda says, if it's not a shear that people have the derech to make an error, then Rava says we will not match their aids to each other. Where Abaya actually has a different perspective. Abaya holds that we will not assume aids are liars if there's a way to explain what they said without a deception. And since Rabbi Yehuda says a person only makes a mistake by a half an hour, or according to the second version, by an hour. So now we can interpret the testimony in two ways. One, in a way that they're lying, because the discrepancy is too wide for error, for margin of error. And one in a way that they're not lying, and that's how we're going to interpret it. Where Rava absolutely argues, and he says that this is the opposite of Eitzilu Eid. Our focus shouldn't be on assuming that they're innocent. Our focus should be on assuming that the victim, the potential victim, is innocent. So here we have the big machloikus of Abaya and Rava. How to understand this Mishnah. Okay, we'll continue tomorrow.